Put a little more sunshine, would you?
I'm a weather witch, not a snowplow.
It's like we were playing with fire and didn't even know it.
If there's anything those kids are used to doing, it's keeping their cool and keeping their secrets.
Okay, let's get on with it. Action!
You're gonna be Dracula? Cool. Well then, duh. I mean, yeah, sure. Of course I'm gonna totally try out.
X-Men may come across to most parents as like a TV series based in fiction, but that's not true at all. In each and every episode, we deal with issues that any average teenager, young kid can identify with.
The idea of having them as teenagers gives us the advantage of exploring a lot of issues that I think kids can relate to. That time of our lives is usually pretty pivotal. The pressures we feel with school and from other kids and trying to fit in, and then you throw into that mix the added burden of having these superpowers and abilities, and that creates a lot of good issues for storytelling.
We're approaching the character of the Blob. He's got a lot of human issues that a lot of kids have when they're in school, right? They're just looking for the people that they fit in with, and that's basically what Freddy's all about. He has this inner conflict, whether he's a good guy or if he's hanging out with kind of like the delinquent group.
The best storytelling always comes out of characters that you really care about and that seem real and that you can identify with, so that when they do go into action and they do get into dangerous situations, the concern that you feel as a viewer is more intense because you see them as real people.
Spot the flag? No. Pop up top and see if it's still there.
X-Men Evolution's script process is probably fairly unique. Ultimately, what worked best was to develop the stories in-house. We get in a room and we toss the stories around until we get something that we like. And that is a story that I then assign to a writer. Wolverine is definitely a writer's favorite, but we really are selective as to which stories we're going to devote to him, because he takes over. You know, when he's in an episode, that's who you're watching.
With Wolverine, it's not so much the voice as kind of discovering the character and finding out his issues. And, you know, it's just, there's a lot of anger in Wolverine.
Another character who gets pitched quite often is Nightcrawler, because he's a fun character. He's got a great power. People seem to want to come up with stories that deal with what he's going through.
We're really specific about the format and the formula. If all of the show is just action, it doesn't carry the same intensity and the same weight as if you have, you know, very compelling characters that you really care about. We want to have a variety in the stories. Some of them are going to be kind of dark, serious dramas. Some of them are going to be lighter. Some of them are even going to focus on the villains rather than the good guys and be told more from their perspective.
Traditionally, the episodes have an A and a B story. If it's an episode that's heavy on action, we like to have a B story that at least allows some laughs. If it's an episode that's more comedy-driven, we prefer to have a B story that gives us some action.
It gets kind of complicated, especially when you only have 22 minutes in which to construct all of these stories and to weave it all together.
It's been probably the biggest challenge for writers is to find that correct mix between the action and the drama.
A lot of the themes we deal with come out of good storytelling. And so you try and deal with issues that really come out of real life.
In season 1, we deal with unity and family and friendship and trust.
We don't sit down and consciously think, okay, it's time to learn this lesson this week and we'll do a show with that theme.
Those things could have taken your empty head right off.
I think we mostly try to think of what's a good, interesting story, and then as a result of that story, we sort of find what the issue and what the theme is going to be and make it part of how we tell that story.
Season 1 had 2 arcs. One was Magneto, what he was about. You heard that eerie magnetic hum. You saw metal objects floating in the air and his eyes lighting up from the darkness, and you knew he was there. The other continuity arc that season 1 was Rogue, and how when she was brought into the show, she was this certain type of flawed character with a major chip on her shoulder, and bringing her into the X-Men fold and what she has to go through in order to finally trust them. That arced over several episodes. until finally she was a part of the team, and even then we kept her somewhat of an outsider.
It's getting kind of hard to tell the players without a scorecard around here.
She's tough, and she doesn't take any from anyone, and, you know, she's on her own track a lot of the time.
The idea that we're all different, have different abilities, we have different backgrounds, we're from different races, that aspect of the show is kind of unique and kind of special about this series.
I was just telling Kurt how I set up this institute for gifted youngsters.
We wanted to set up the fact that there was an Xavier Institute, that Professor X was in the process of recruiting other mutant kids to come to his institute and be under his guidance. We also wanted to set up the fact that in our series, the kids went to a normal high school. A big part of the premise of this show is their acceptance into society. And it was always a goal of Professor X's to get these kids in a place where they would be accepted. If they're only at his school, then it's kind of hard to convey that message.
I think it's important to start off a series like this when you have such a very large cast, is to start the cast small. Strategy X does that, starts very small.
In the X-Men mythos from the comics, Jean and Scott were the first two recruits of Xavier. We knew that we wanted Jean to be Miss Popular. Scott was a little more of the quiet, loner type of guy, and he obviously liked Jean.
We get to meet one of the fans' favorite characters, Nightcrawler.
He's very reclusive, very self-conscious about his appearance. He has to be because of the ridicule that he would face.
Whoa.
We also introduced some of our villains. We introduced Mystique as the principal of the school. She's recruiting the guys for her side of the team at the same time as Xavier's recruiting his.
What we try to do with each of our villains when we introduce them is set them in a sympathetic manner.
Toad is the mutant we focus on here, is the person that Mystique is working with to try and get him inside of Xavier's school so she can have him do some scouting there for her. We also wanted to not have it be too dark and negative because the theme of the X-Men is basically prejudice and hatred and people mistrusting these mutants.
Normal is what you truly are. Never think otherwise.
Yes, there was the tension and the conflict, but we wanted to lighten it up with some humor and some fun stuff too. And Toad worked really well for that. He's always great for comedy relief.
We really get to take this huge Marvel universe of characters and put them into a little high school and try to tell compelling stories. They were just going to be stories that were important to our characters and therefore important to our viewers.
In the X-Impulse, we are introducing Kitty Pryde as the newest recruit. She's having a nightmare, and she wakes up and finds out she's actually in the basement. She's phased right through the bed and through the floor and has no idea how she got there. It's a real traumatic experience for her.
What am I? What's happening to me?
Just as kids normally in the real world deal with peer pressure. In this episode, you have Lance, who's trying to influence Kitty one way for his own purposes. And then Jean is there along with Xavier, and Jean is trying to talk to Kitty and influence her in another way.
One of the things about Kitty's characterization early on was you'll see a change from kind of the Valley Girl talk.
You, don't know anything, and neither does that creepy guy out there.
By the time the first season was over, we realized, I think it's better to de-emphasize some of that. So you'll notice she doesn't talk like that in the second season. But in the first season, that was her character portrayal.
We knew that Wolverine is probably the most popular character in the X-Men universe with most kids, so we wanted to look for opportunities to give him screen time. And Sabretooth has always been sort of his nemesis.
The battle between Wolverine and Sabretooth was an interesting exercise in the working relationship between the writer and the director.
Bring it on, Pops. Bring it on.
The script actually had them fighting more around town, and I decided to keep them in this parking structure where we could have a nice little battle where they're throwing cars at each other.
So suddenly here's Sabretooth taking, huge cars and ramming them up through the level to the next level. I was thrilled when I saw that. I thought, that's exactly the way this series should be.
Rogue is kind of a favorite character, so I was happy to be able to direct her first episode. This is a character who can't touch anyone, is afraid of people, so it was kind of fun to play with that element of her.
When we were creating our version of Rogue, we were trying to think logically what kind of a personality type would that lead her to become. And that led us to making her goth, where she dresses and behaves and acts as if she doesn't want to fit in.
It's great drama to see a character like that torn, and we get to see her very torn, and we get to see her being manipulated, and which makes her a very sympathetic character. So as unlikable of a character she could be, you like her because she's being used.
You won't hurt her, will you? After all, Raven, she's your...
I know, Irene.
That idea came from the comics as well. I think in the original story of Rogue, she is portrayed as the adopted daughter of Mystique, and she's raised by Mystique to be evil. We didn't want to make it quite that dark. We didn't want to keep her bad for a long time. We knew we wanted her to end up on the good side. We portrayed it in this episode as if she's just being deceived by Mystique.
You just cannot wait for her eyes to be open and to realize she's on the wrong side. Get with the X-Men, it's where you belong.
You can reach me anytime with this communicator.
The final confrontation between her and the other X-Men was visually one of the most exciting things we'd done up to that point in the series. We kind of set up an interesting dynamic here where Magneto's the guy behind the curtain calling all the shots, influencing Mystique, and she's working for him.
Magneto had this great theme music that Will Anderson developed, so that whenever you heard it, it almost made the hair stand up on your arms. Hearing his magnetic hum and seeing things like paper clips and staplers floating around the office, it was very chilling. He was obviously very powerful. Waiting to see what he was about, I think, helped propel the viewers through the first season. Mutant Crush is a great episode for introducing a character like Blob.
The Blob was actually one of my favorite characters. I think everybody sympathizes with the Blob.
The misunderstood kind of guy that has been the butt of way too many jokes.
If you laugh at the Blob, you're just stepping into a pile of trouble.
It's very easy to create a guy who's just nothing but brute strength and, you know, not too bright upstairs, and to turn him into a caricature. But he's never had a friend before. And suddenly, for the first time, he's found a friend in Jean Grey, and he didn't know how to react to it. With that knowledge in mind, when you watch him in further episodes, you understand who that character is, and you care about what happens to them.
No one's ever been nice to Fred before. Like many lonely guys, when an attractive female is friendly to them, their hopes get a little too high, and they take things maybe a little too far. In this case, he definitely takes things very too far, which of course gets the X-Men in on things, and that's off a chain of events that lead into the battle royale with the Blob.
We wanted to show the idea that the powers would be evolving, and that Jean's abilities in this episode, she wasn't as strong as she's portrayed later. She's got the ability to move things with her mind and to use her telekinesis, but not to the extent that she could free herself. In the later episodes, her power evolves, and she could have gotten out of that situation easily. So that's intentional. We wanted to show this evolution of power. In Speed and Spike, we're introducing a brand new character to the X-Men universe. That's Evan Daniels. He's the nephew of Storm.
Bless you.
He's a character that was created specifically for our series. We thought we were creating something really unique, and then after we created him, of course, the fans pointed out to us that he has the same powers as another character called Marrow, but that was very unintentional. We didn't do that on purpose. It just sort of turned out that way.
It was refreshing to write for Spike, actually, because we didn't have to please anybody who might remember a different version of that character.
Anyone messes with me?
With Spike, we wanted to introduce the urban kid. He doesn't need this Xavier school. He resists the efforts of his aunt and the other X-Men to join up.
I like it right here, and I'm not going to some home for freaks.
As opposed to Kitty and Nightcrawler and others that we've introduced for whom their mutant power was a traumatic experience, he thinks it's cool.
You want to play tonight? The Spike Man is ready.
We're also introducing Quicksilver as sort of his nemesis. Quicksilver's a regular. He exists in the comics. Pietro's jealous of the fact that Evan's getting a lot of attention as the star of the basketball team, because he knows that with his mutant ability, his super speed, he could win easily and he could run circles around everyone. But he's been told to hold back and not use his power in public.
It was fun getting to do a character like Quicksilver, coming up with ideas for him to be zipping around town, and he tears up the street and causes this whirlwind, and cars are flying, and more destruction and cars flying into cameras, so that was good too.
Too slow.
The way the animators handled Pietro's super speed in this series is really great. Since this series is done with digital ink and paint, we can add such things as motion blurs. The motion blur comes across really effectively in conveying the idea of how fast he is and how quickly he can move around.
We always made an effort in the network meetings to figure out, can we have a special episode? And Forge was one of those ideas. Let's bring him in. He's a well-liked character in the comics.
A guy who's a genius, a brilliant inventor, and as a young student, he got himself into trouble by creating a device that sent him into another dimension, and he just disappeared.
So this was kind of a departure from our normal continuity of the series. We established a pocket dimension. We have a kid that's been trapped in there since 1978, and those are just elements that you don't normally see in X-Men Evolution, but I think it came out well because it's kind of fascinating.
Because of Nightcrawler's ability to teleport, he seemed like a logical character to put the focus on and to have him teleported by accident into this strange dimension that Forge has created.
Middleverse was just kind of a fun episode, more of a lighthearted episode where we just got to play with Kurt. He's always a fun character because we know we can go a little lighter on him.
Even though these X-Men get along very well, there's still, as in any family, because there's going to be these conflicts. And so we kind of played off of the idea that Scott is uptight, whereas Nightcrawler, Kurt, is much more of a prankster and just wants to have fun. So we use that sort of conflict between these guys and their personalities as a jumping off point to tell this story. In Turn of the Rogue, we finally bring Rogue around to realize that Mystique has been deceiving her, and she joins the X-Men.
I think Rogue has a lot of dimension. She's a very confused girl. She's put in a position of where to place her trust. Obviously, the subtext is trust in this episode, and who to trust, and repercussions of trusting the wrong people.
Also in this story, we were able to develop a little bit more the idea that Rogue does have a crush on Scott. And she feels particularly hurt and betrayed when Mystique tells her that Scott and the other X-Men are in training sessions to figure out ways to fight against her.
Gotcha!
In the comics, Mystique, I believe, did not change into animal form. She just changed into other humanoid forms. For us, it was more of a visual thing. It's the kind of thing that it creates a lot more opportunities of what we can do with her, the kind of deception she's able to pull off. And visually, in animation, it's an exciting, more interesting way to present her with her powers. Also in this episode is the first time we see Magneto actually come face-to-face with Xavier and confront him. We imply that there is a long-term relationship here, that these guys have known each other before, and that they have a very different philosophy on how to deal with the mutant powers and the way that the rest of humanity is going to react to them. By having the X-Men in a public school and in situations in the public where they have to use their powers for various reasons, it creates this interesting tension. In this show, Scott has to use his power to save the bus from going over the cliff, but he tries to do it without being noticed. But that's an ongoing theme that we play with throughout this series. Do I use my powers, or do I worry more about being discovered? And so it's a tension that always exists for these guys.
Spycam allowed us to get a unique point of view on the daily life of our characters, which I always found fascinating. What do they do when they're not in the danger room?
The fact that he has videotaped a lot of the X-Men and Sabretooth gets a hold of it, he's able to find out where Wolverine is and goes after him. In the episodes prior to this, Sabretooth was a B type of character. He was in the peripheral story. We implied that there's this ongoing grudge match between him and Wolverine. So in this episode, he became the focus. He's the main villain, and his attack on the Institute and against Wolverine got played out to a much greater degree here than we were able to do in previous episodes.
The funnest part of Spike Cam actually didn't really involve Spike. It was basically him taking pictures of Kitty trying to teach Rogue how to dance.
And Kitty's a really good dancer, and Rogue is not. So it's sort of a fun little way to use her powers. Instead of it being a terrible traumatic thing, she's able to just touch Kitty very briefly and absorb some of her dancing ability.
We did step a little bit out of our rule book at the end of that episode, where Rogue absorbs the power of Sabretooth and actually grows pointy ears and long hair and hair on her legs. The rule of Rogue is she just absorbs their mutant power, not their physicality. Anyway, a lot of the fans pointed out to us, the fact that we broke our own rule there. Survival of the Fittest, I think, is a fan favorite for several different reasons. One is Juggernaut is a very popular character, and it was great to unleash him on the Institute and basically just be unable to stop this guy. What gave it its weight was his relationship with Charles Xavier.
Everybody has an evil twin in the world of comic books, and the Juggernaut is Xavier's evil twin.
So it was more than just kind of a mindless guy going on a rampage. It was a guy who felt cheated out of everything that Charles Xavier got.
Lay out the welcome mat, brother. I'm coming home.
I think the director, Gary, did a great job in how he set up all the efforts that Mystique had to go through just to get into that place, to free Juggernaut, as to how dangerous this guy was and all the security that he's being kept under.
And Juggernaut tosses her aside, and he's a fun character because he's just unstoppable.
One of the other reasons why I think the fans like this episode is, for the first time, we paired the Brotherhood, the X-Men, together to fight a common cause.
It was kind of fun to see the way they took on Juggernaut and worked as a unit to get his helmet off and make him vulnerable so that Xavier could use his power to take him down. In Shadowed Past, we really kind of changed gears with the tone of the show. We were drawing on the old classic horror films to a large extent here, with the castle out in the middle of the wilderness, Mystique fleeing from the castle with the baby. Even the imagery of the lab, where who knows what kind of work has been going on there with Magneto and the experiments that Mystique was so distraught about.
Monster! What have you done to him?
The reason why we wanted to keep it somewhat vague is because we were basically stating something that hadn't been true in the comics. There's a scene where Mystique is carrying him, and I believe in the comics she actually throws him over a bridge. We're not going to do that on a Saturday morning cartoon.
Despite the fact that Kurt tends to be very carefree, we wanted to show he had another side, that he was only carefree on the surface and that there were problems that plagued him.
Magneto experimented on him when he was a baby and triggered his X gene early on.
We also wanted to show that Mystique was something more than just a one-dimensional villain.
As a mother, she has feelings for Kurt, and that she's obviously very torn by the fact that she was not able to raise him and was forced to abandon him.
Get out of here, all of you!
No can do, boss lady. We got higher orders.
The other thing that we introduce in this story is the idea that Pietro is basically spying for his father, Magneto, without Mystique's knowledge. Magneto has his own motives and his own plans that go beyond whatever Mystique thinks she's up to. Wolverine is having flashbacks and remembering some hidden part of his subconscious of the time when he was experimented on and was given his claws and his adamantium skeleton. He tries to find out what the source of this nightmare is and learns a little bit more about how he became Wolverine and who did this to him.
It's revered ground that we were treading on to start going into the whole Weapon X history.
The idea of getting into Wolverine's origin and his past, that's always been good stuff. It's always been really popular in the comics.
Definitely felt pressure on making sure we didn't mess this up.
You get into the Weapon X project, you get into the evil doctors.
The evil doctor who's did the experiment on him has planted this chip in his brain that he's activated, and that's drawing him back home again. So when Kitty and Kurt can see that he's not himself and he's not behaving normally, they tag along and help him out.
Another big Sabretooth episode big fight with Sabretooth. Just a lot of fun little bits and pieces for any true X-Man fan.
In this episode, Kitty plays the key role. She's, at the risk of her own life, willing to confront him and help him and try and get through to him.
It's me, Kitty. Remember? Half pint?
He's basically trying to do away with her. And so she's using everything she can to outsmart Wolverine and try to bring him back into his senses away from the power of the evil doctor. And in the course of doing this, there's just a tremendous amount of emotions coming out for some of these characters that is very uncommon in this type of a cartoon.
Throughout the series, Magneto has pretty much been in the background, and you haven't known what he's all about, what his plans are. And so in this season finale, we sort of bring him out to the forefront, and he's the big bad guy, and we get a better idea of what he's been up to. I was really impressed with the animation on this episode. I mean, visually, I think there's just some beautiful stuff going on here.
We got to see all of them in action. We got to see everybody doing what they've been trained to do. We got to see a betrayal between Magneto and Mystique.
Scott's past and how he gained his abilities was a story we hadn't been able to tell because he was already there at the beginning, both he and Jean. This backstory was a way to introduce that all. When Scott finds out that his brother's still alive, obviously, I mean, it's very exciting. He thinks his brother's been dead for years and years, and we find out that he was raised as an orphan, so it's a really powerful moment when the two of them come together.
Scott Summers has always been a straight arrow, and Alex clearly is not. I mean, he's a guy who's raised on the beach and would prefer to be out floating on a surfboard, and then suddenly he's being labeled a mutant. I mean, this is a world that he just did not want.
Alex, when he's approached by Magneto, he hasn't had the experiences that Scott has had. He doesn't know who this Magneto guy is. He's meeting him for the first time, whereas Scott has a little more experience to draw from and reason to be more mistrustful, but Alex is kind of pulled in by the things that Magneto says he has to offer.
Part 2 of the Cauldron was fun because I enjoyed working with Scott and his brother Alex. You know, I liked that relationship and the fact that they'd lost touch and they were rediscovering one another.
The thing we were trying to set up here is that even a character as straight and as usually clear-headed as Scott can be influenced. I think it's a combination of the fact that his brother, who he hasn't seen for so long, is making a convincing argument why he thinks Magneto ought to be trusted, and that he doesn't want to go against his brother because he's just been rejoined to him for the first time in many, many years. But the other thing, I think, is that in the case of both Alex and Scott in particular, is his power is a handicap. And Magneto's promising both he and Alex that he can remove those handicaps, that he can allow them to have it under control. So it's a real powerful temptation that he's offering.
Go on, Scott. Show us the color of your eyes.
We didn't end this as a cliffhanger in that sense. We left it a little bit up in the air as to who had survived when the asteroid was destroyed, whether Magneto had made it out, whether Mystique had made it out. We inferred that they did. We showed that the Brotherhood had all survived. They still weren't all that keen on where they were going to go next and whether they were going to hook up with the X-Men or not, whether they fit in with them, because they'd basically just lost their leaders. They'd lost Mystique and Magneto, and so they're out there just sort of loose and, well, what are we going to do next? But the X-Men were all united with Professor X at their head and ready to take on whatever came next.
I'm going in.
Wanted to make it very feature-esque in its presentation.
We were trying to go for something that was very distinctive without doing something that we'd seen before.
We wanted to give it a look of its own.
Let's move.
At the early stage of the process, we tried a lot of different approaches. I did some artwork, I did drawings. Our character designer, Steve Gordon, did a lot of designs.
We would have to relate it somewhat to the comics, but we felt that we could probably start fresh.
Some of the Marvel folks in New York even contributed some designs, and all of this material was gone over by the network and Avi and the folks at Marvel.
As soon as Boyd started sending sketches in, it was pretty clear that this is the way to go.
We made a conscious decision to go with a kind of a long, lean look on the character. It's very stylized.
We knew that we were going to have silhouettes that had strength to them, but we also knew that since we were going with black as an overall design element, we weren't going to have a lot of interior detail on their muscles and so forth. And so we were going for a streamlined look, a simple line. We wanted to do a straights against curve concept on their design, where you always had a straight line working against a curved line. That is kind of a design element in animation that gives a certain strength to it.
Whoa! Easy on the exquisite costume, mein Freund.
There's been so many different versions of the X-Men costumes over the years. There's been a lot of different variations on it. We kind of came up with this idea of having a core base color.
We wanted to keep the costumes functional. We didn't really design them to be individual taste at this point because they're more like school workout uniforms. These are things that they train in. It's not like they've discovered their identity yet.
And then the accessories on top of that each character wore were distinctive for each character.
We wanted to put a certain unique feature on each of them that would just add a little bit of personality.
Far out, man! Oh, I swear, that homie's lingo is so whack!
The color motifs are somewhat based on the traditional comic book colors, where Jean has green incorporated in her costume, and Kitty has light blue, Rogue has a dark green, Cyclops has got a lot of yellow in his costume. And, you know, obviously we tried to incorporate X's throughout most of them, you know, on shoulder pads and belt buckles and so forth.
But it's that black or dark gray base that's consistent in all of them that makes them look like a team.
That's it, I'm out of here. Ah! Why don't you stick around for a while?
When we've designed the characters and we have a pretty good idea of how they look, and then we want to do tests to see how they should move. We used one of our directors and a great animator, Steve Gordon, who also designed the characters, to do tests of these characters doing walks and runs, and in some cases utilizing their powers.
For all the main characters, we came up with walk cycles and sometimes run cycles, depending on the character. Some of the girls would swing their hips, and some would swing them more than others, and some would walk a little more straight-legged. Wolverine, we gave more of a stalking attitude towards when he was in his Wolverine costume. And when he was Logan, we gave him more of a loping look, like he didn't care. He had his hands in his pocket type of attitude.
Now mind your manners.
You know, obviously Nightcrawler was very specific. We had to come up with a run for him where he needed to run like a cat, and a walk cycle for him where he would walk on his feet, which was very different than what you're used to seeing in animation. But we tried to come up with something different for each of them.
I'm really proud of the fact that I think, for the most part, almost every episode in this series is really high quality. It's good storytelling, the animation's great, the art is good to look at. I'm really proud of the quality of the show and how good it is.
We wanted to make an attractive show. That was the whole idea.
Welcome to the X-Men.
X-Men, we have an emergency. Scott, get the Blackbird prepped for launch.
At the beginning, Kids WB wanted the focus of the show to be on the X-Men as younger characters, as teenagers, and that fit real well with actually the origin of the X-Men in the Marvel Comics. The whole concept of a mutant is a gene that has mutated and gives you a special power and ability, and the whole idea of mutating genes ties into the theory of evolution and how evolution works. The thing that Stan Lee did back in the 60s when he created a lot of these characters was to think, what would it be like if a normal person was suddenly given special abilities and powers like a superhero? Realistically, how would they behave? How would they react?
We spent a good deal of time to develop those characters so that they, in essence, become 3D. They become real.
And the idea of taking someone who's still young and still trying to find out who they are and still deals with all the issues that young people deal with, and then add to that the fact that now they're different. They have some special ability. Are they going to use it for good or ill? Is it going to solve all the rest of their problems? Of course it won't. And that's what made the characters interesting.
If we were to jump right into a band of superheroes out there saving the world, we wouldn't have gotten to know them as well as going through some of the struggles that they go through.
Ha! We showed him! We are the X-Men!
I don't fight your battles, so don't fight mine.
The more we thought about it, we more liked the idea that we want to see them where we most can relate to them and what it is to be a teen and dealing with the fact that you are slightly different.
By aging our characters down and reducing their level of skill or powers, we have a place to grow. We have Jean, who at the beginning of season 1 can rattle a chair and lift it up with some effort, and she's having trouble. As the episodes progress, she's soon able to lift bigger things and heavier things and throw things. We enjoy the fact that we have characters who are unsure of what they're capable of.
If we can create these characters out of paper and make our viewers actually feel for them, then we've accomplished a great deal.
Well, when we first started the show, the whole group wasn't there. We started at the beginning with just Scott and Jean and Professor X and the other adult characters, and then introduced them one by one.
I think the first 6 episodes are introductions of characters that once you get to know them and understand them, when you see them in adventures and crises, you feel for them. I mean, you understand exactly what they're going through.
It was a conscious decision to try and find a good blend of personalities, characters that would work well together and react differently in different situations. But it was also thinking in terms of their powers and abilities and visually what that would look like on screen.
By taking it out of the comics continuity, we were able to actually tell new stories.
We'll kind of use the original comic stories as a jumping off point. We use that as a starting point. A lot of times they'll do things in the comics that we can't do in a kid's show.
This is our opportunity to tell new stories with beloved characters.
Welcome home, old friend. We've missed you.
One of the original thoughts that I was trying to push forward was using the old Kirby, the yellow jumper on top of the black spandex look. And so that was kind of where we started. And then from there we started to play with it a little bit. We wanted to kind of start with a main uniform for all of them, and then we started to accessorize it considerably. We wanted to go for some geometry to their designs. Their legs are terribly long, and their torsos are very short, and we thought that was a nice design element.
And a lot of the characters did evolve over time, and there's a few that just kind of jumped out at you. Magneto was like one quick sketch, and he just flew through the new Magneto design. But there are others, Kitty and Jane, that we just went through a lot of different things, and Rogue especially, but ultimately we got these really unique designs that are very unusual for Saturday morning style animation.
A lot of people first experience with the X-Men was through the previous animated series, or they read the comics and were a little different than the comics in some ways. And some of the differences are the choices of which characters were there at the beginning and how they joined and how they first got their powers. So we've had to play around with some of that stuff a little bit in this series, but I think the essence of what the X-Men were all about and everything, we're being pretty true to that.
So I don't think we compromised anything from the X-Men universe. On the contrary, I think we enlarged it.
Are you ready?
been going into meltdown here, all covered up like this. I hate it.
I'm strong. I'm agile. I got this killer tongue. How could I be left behind? Twice.
Hey, what's the stitch? I thought we were Hawaii bound.
Charles, there's something in my head.
How about you get inside and see if you can pry it loose?
Look, whatever they did to you, you're fighting it. You can win.
Well, as far as I can determine, Magneto's on the loose again.
Nobody discards me, even Magneto. Understand?
When you're casting a show like this, we usually have auditions.
Okay, they're auditioning for a new X-Men thing.
You look at a character like Wolverine and who he is and what he does, and you say, well, we need a guy with sort of a gruff sound.
Yeah, easy for you to say.
Hi, my name's Scott McNeil, and I play Wolverine, a.k.a. Logan on X-Men Evolution. Most people are just like, dude, man, you're Wolverine, man. He is a very real character. His role in this is not so much always just out there, you know. Don't make me angry.
Are you okay?
I think there's a lot more of Wolverine's humanness. It makes it interesting to play.
With the Professor X, you want somebody who sounds very controlled.
Mystique may very well be the boy's mother, but we may never know the truth now.
My name is David Kane. I play Professor Charles Xavier, the Xavier Institute for Gifted Students.
You must have absorbed the memories of someone who indeed knows about Kurt's past.
It was kind of a cool audition because I collected Marvel Comics like everybody did. X-Men, of course, is one of my favorite, and I got the call. So I was like, yes, X-Men, yeah. So it was a week I was on this, this high.
Get him!
Sometimes you don't have any preconceptions as to how a character should sound. And then from the audition, somebody comes in and does something that's just really different than what you would have ever imagined, but it's wonderful, and everybody's just really impressed by it.
I'm Noel Fisher, and I play Toad in X-Men.
If you're still here, then that means you're a loser too.
He's all scratchy and cool and like hopping around and slurping and eating like flies and stuff. Yeah. All the slurps are done by me. I gotta go. It's a lot of fun.
Knock, knock.
My name's Colleen Wheeler, and I play the voice for Mystique on X-Men Evolution.
I shouldn't even have to prove myself to him.
They wanted someone with a low voice, and I seemed to hit that for them, so they liked it, and I got the role.
Get out! Get out now!
I'm really a nice person, honestly.
Hi, I'm Michael Dobson, and I play the Blob. I am the Blob! When we were first approaching the character of the Blob, it was really important to make sure that it came across as not being the quintessential bully. We realized that inside there is somebody who's looking basically to be understood and fit in somewhere.
Yuck, Blob, I totally need a shower now.
My name is Maggie Blue O'Hara, and I play Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat.
I wouldn't. He's been acting like mega weird all morning.
We just rolled with what kind of voice I already had, which was young and bubbly, and the way that she was written was quite enthusiastic, and so I just used my own style, and they seemed to like what I already had.
Do you really want to hurt me, Mr. Logan?
Kitty's a cool girl, and so am I.
I really do know what you're going through. We'll both keep looking, and we'll find our answers together someday. My name is Megan Black, and I play Rogue. Rogue has a lot of attitude. She's my favorite character, because she can absorb everybody's power. I can be a tough, big guy in my little rogue body. She rocks.
What if some of us don't like the festering boils?
You could, deal with it.
Neil Dennis, I play Spike. He's got much different powers than anything people have usually seen before, as in bone protrusions, kind of like the armadillo effect.
Still think I'm being dramatic?
In the recording sessions, it's interesting to see the transformations that people go through.
It's very much like being a kid.
Voice actors especially are really crazy for some reason.
I will kill you!
I mean, that's one seriously disturbed lady. A bunch of schizophrenic in one room.
Slave away in front of a hot microphone all day.
Okay.
Basically, you get to play for like hours on end with all the other people that are in there because everybody's so much fun.
Oh yeah, this thing cooks.
Yes, my friend, it's hard, hot, sweaty work.
Come here often?
It's like school days again, man. I'm really sorry, but it is.
We usually don't have a lot of time in these recording sessions. We got to get busy pretty quickly and get down to work.
Playtime is over.
That's another important part of the voice director's job, is to get them all under control.
You're going through everything in real time. You're reading through the script like a radio play. And if the actors are getting it and everything's falling together, that's great.
That was great, you know. I also love that. That was perfect. We're just going to change the one thing and move on.
If they start to stray, or if they're not quite getting it right.
You know what, you guys? That totally sucked. We're going to do it again, do it a different way.
It's like, okay, cool.
You're stay behind!
He always allows the sessions to be a lot of fun, because it's got to be. I mean, we're doing cartoons, man. It's got to be fun.
So it's nice to be able to just work with all those, all those talents.
I thought something stunk about this forest.
And the fight scenes are great. I mean, they're Gestalt therapy. All that just like...
I'm punching in the air, or if you're falling, your arms are moving.
You look over and someone will be going like,
Part of the job.
You sure this isn't gonna hurt? You know, you forget that you're working sometimes. It's awesome.
X-Men. Go love that.
Charles Xavier's idea of a mutant utopia is a nice one, but that's not the world we live in. Magneto wants to rule us all, humans and mutants alike. This is not acceptable to me. There has to be another option. My name is Mystique, and I believe as mutants we will have to control our own destiny if we are to survive. I have assembled a small but dedicated group devoted to this idea. I provide them food, a place to live, and training. We don't have the unlimited resources of Xavier's mansion, but the house is a roof over your head. If you find yourself lost or feeling like you don't fit in, this also gives you a place to be in an environment with other like-minded people and a chance to get to know your allies. People like Todd Talansky, the nasty but nimble Toad. Lance Alvers, the earth-shaking Avalanche. Fred Dukes, the immovable Blob. Pietro Maximov, the speed demon Quicksilver, and his sister Wanda, the hex-casting Scarlet Witch. It also provides you a place where you can train and prepare for the road that lies ahead. Now I'm forced to make my move. You will be expected to attend a local school. We don't want to draw undue attention from the authorities. However, you will have quite a bit of freedom with us. Do whatever it is you do. I would never ask you to be anything other than who you are. All I ask is for you to stay focused on our mission and stay patient. Where do your loyalties lie? And while the mission may call for me to appear to disappear from time to time, I may be closer than you think. Rest assured, I'm keeping an eye on you. The choice is yours. Embrace reality. Embrace freedom. Join us.
When the comic was first created in the 60s by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, the X-Men were youngsters. They were in high school. Similarly with Spider-Man, he was in high school when he first got his powers. And it's an interesting idea because a lot of the things these guys deal with as mutants is similar to teen issues. This is all kind of a metaphor for going through changes and finding out that you're different and finding social acceptance. And it's just exaggerated with these guys because of their abilities and the fears that they have that they're going to be discovered by the other kids with these powers and abilities. What we've done with the Scott and Jean thing is to kind of make it exciting and interesting and fun by sort of teasing the whole thing. We didn't want to just jump right into it. We've gone back to the beginnings here with the X-Men and how everything started. And it seems like as soon as a relationship is working and comes together, then it's no longer interesting and fun and dramatic. So we kind of keep these guys wondering if they're going to get together or not. And Scott's obviously been interested in Jean from the beginning, and she's got this other guy in her life, Duncan Matthews, and he's sort of an antagonist in this show for Scott, a competitor for Jean and her attentions. We have a lot of fun playing with these tensions and this attraction that you can see that they both feel, but Jean's a little reluctant to want to jump into that. This is an exciting episode where we focused on one of our new recruits, Tabitha, who is also known as Boom Boom because of her power. In the first season, we always wanted our bad guys to have a female amongst them, and she was our villainess of choice, but it never worked out for various reasons, so we introduced her in this season as one of the new recruits with the X-Men. She kind of represents our team who has a troubled past, and this episode we learn more about that. She doesn't quite fit in with the regimented lifestyle that most of the X-Men and the kids are used to. She's a free spirit and kind of ends up at the end of this episode going out on her own and eventually bunking with the Brotherhood. Fun and games. The professor has been called away on an emergency involving Juggernaut, and the kids are left to their own devices there at the mansion, and they all decide to throw this party and invite their friends, and Scott and Jean are supposed to be the responsible older kids that are left in charge. They're tricked by the younger kids and abandoned out in the hills, and so we get more exciting Scott-Jean moments together where they're accusing each other of setting this thing up. I like this episode a lot because it has a nice blend of fun and action and character and personality stuff.
My name is Charles Xavier, and I created this institute with the goal of bringing peace and understanding between mutants and the general population. One of the steps toward this goal is to give young people with mutant abilities a safe place to feel they can be themselves and learn how to use their special talents for the betterment of mankind. With the help of Cerebro, we locate potential students from all over the planet. These are the latest recruits. Ronnie Sinclair, codename Wolf's Bane. She has the remarkable ability to transform herself from a young girl into a wolf and has the enhanced senses to prove it. Like her canine counterpart, Wolfsbane has quite a playful side, but she can also be quite intimidating under the right circumstances. Ray Crisp, codename Berserker. Though a bit hot-headed, Berserker has really applied himself to his training. He's learning to focus the electrical energy that he can generate from his hands, and we're expecting good things from him. Amara Aquila, codename Magma. She's able to use her body to generate extreme heat, which she can control at various degrees. Even at her young age, she's already displayed a strong mastery of her powers, but she could use a boost in the confidence department.
I told you I wasn't ready for this.
Roberto da Costa, codename Sunspot. Sunspot certainly doesn't suffer from a lack of self-confidence. If anything, he may have a bit too much, but Roberto has a good attitude and is starting to get a firm grasp on his solar-based powers.
Come on, give me some sun! Now we're talking!
Jubilation Lee, codename Jubilee. Quite mischievous and a bit careless.
Oops!
Jubilee is showing she's just as dedicated to working hard as she is to playing hard. We're still unlocking the potential of her energy-based abilities, and in time, Jubilation will push her powers beyond fireworks and colorful light shows. Sam Guthrie, codename Cannonball. Cannonball is very much a normal teenager who has a world of potential, but is still trying to find his way on the team.
Oh, watch out! Whoa!
Sam can propel himself with a type of thermochemical energy that allows him to blast through the air and topple opponents at dizzying, accelerated speeds. We're still exploring the limits of this ability. Jamie Madrox, codename Multiple. He's the youngest of the new recruits, but is determined to be an X-Man.
If you can, I can.
He has the extraordinary ability to create temporary duplicates of himself that serve as on-the-spot reinforcements in times of danger. Jamie seems to be reluctantly accepting of his abilities, even as he's still learning to control them. Bobby Drake, codename Iceman. Bobby's an interesting case. His body can literally generate ice. He's shown remarkable skill in controlling his powers and has displayed an innovative approach in how to utilize them. Although he's a bit impulsive, Bobby is a natural leader and already a strong addition to the student body here at the Institute. In fact, this new class of recruits has really taken to life here at the Institute. Although they may still be young, they are very eager to learn about their powers and explore ways to use them to help others. If these new mutants are any indication, the future of the X-Men appears to be in good hands.
You know, it is so thrilling to know that in the beginning I started the X-Men just as a comic book. And now today, these wonderful DVDs of the animated show are available. The way these characters come to life, you forget you're watching animation. To me, it's just a beautiful production. One of my inspirations for creating the X-Men was laziness. Now, the reason I say that, you know, in creating a superhero, you have to find a reason why he or she has a superpower. Well, I could only have so many people bitten by radioactive spiders or hit by gamma rays or whatever. And I was running out of ideas to give people superpowers. Then an inspiration struck me. What if I just said they were born that way? They were mutants. We know mutants exist in nature. Occasionally you see a five-legged frog or a pumpkin that's the size of a watermelon or whatever. So I figured I would create characters with superpowers, and I would just say they were mutants. They were born that way. So it was laziness and desperation, but it seems to have worked. Professor X, of course, he was the leader.
What you need, Hank, are students who know your secrets, who have secrets of their own, and who need a man of your compassion to teach them.
Here he was the most powerful of all, mentally, but physically he was the weakest. In fact, in writing the stories, it was always very difficult for me to figure out ways to handicap Professor X or to make it so that he couldn't use his power. I mean, if he met Magneto and Magneto tried to do something bad, he'd just get into his mind and change his mind. In fact, that's why I gave Magneto that idiot helmet he wears. I said something to the effect that the helmet shields him from Professor X's mind probe. See, I try to sound very scientific.
What are these guys? Ghosts?
Their weapons are real enough.
And I liked Cyclops, of course. I always thought of him as the assistant leader. If anything would happen to Professor X, he would be the guy who'd take over, because he was the most competent of all of them. And I thought it was rather tragic that he had this great power. He could do almost anything with his eye beams, but he had to wear those glasses. And if he were involved in a romantic situation with a girl, she just couldn't take off his glasses and gaze into his baby blues. And to me, that was tragic. Having these beautiful baby blues of my own, you know, I can empathize with that. I had a character called the Beast. He was big and burly, and he looked like a big wrestler or something. But he was the most erudite and the most loquacious, and he'd use the most highfalutin language and everything, so he was a total contradiction, the way he looked and acted. And he's now an instructor at the school, which is what he always should have been, being about the brightest and most well-read of all of them.
Oh boy.
Of all the characters, they were all pretty easy for me to come up with. One gave me a little bit of a problem. I knew we had to have a female, so I called her Marvel Girl, but I kept forgetting what her power was. I think it was telekinesis. I think she was able to move things mentally or control things mentally. And I kept forgetting as I'd be writing the story. Now, let me see, what is it that Marvel Girl does again? And now today, here's Marvel Marvel Girl again as Jean Grey.
Wolverine, we've sighted him in the scrapyard.
I really like calling her Jean Grey better. I mean, I must admit Marvel Girl was rather a corny name. But there are so many new characters now, like Nightcrawler. I did not create him, but he is a wonderful character.
I've been working out. Can you tell?
And I love the way in the animated series you've given him the ability to look normal when he's in school among the other kids, and then by touching whatever it is on his wrist, he can become the Nightcrawler again. And you know, how could I have forgotten to mention Wolverine?
I've tracked her to the docks. She's here, somewhere.
We're on our way.
Pardon me for not waiting.
That's my lasting regret that I didn't create Wolverine. I would have loved to be able to say he was my character. He's like a bomb waiting to go off. You know that underneath this exterior there's a raging, tormented personality who at any time might lose his temper and become the most dangerous guy on Earth. And what a great characteristic for a hero, because he's almost an anti-hero, which of course makes him the most fascinating of all the X-Men. I don't know if you're supposed to like a villain as much as a hero, but I've got to tell you, I love Magneto. He is one of my all-time favorite villains. In fact, I shouldn't say one of my all-time favorite villains, one of my all-time favorite characters. Now, the thing about Magneto that really fascinates me, I never thought of him as a bad guy, because he really thinks he's doing the right thing. In the beginning, he had no intention of hurting human beings, but when he learned that the humans resented these people with extra powers and were hunting them and hounding them and harassing them, and if I knew another word with H, I'd say that too, hating them, he felt he had to fight back. Funny thing, most people call him Magneto, and they ask me, what's the correct way? Well, there's no correct way. I call him Magneto, and maybe because I do it, that's the correct way, but you can call him what you want. So I find him a very complex and a very interesting character, and I'm very proud. I did create Magneto. When I meet people in the street, especially young people, one of the questions I'm always getting, if they had a fight, who would win? Cyclops or Wolverine? And what about Professor X and Magneto, if they had to go at it, and on and on? And it's great to hear that, because you know that these characters are interesting to the viewers and they're important to the viewers. And the best thing about it is so many people have told me that they get the symbolism of this oppressed minority and how terrible it is that people are intolerant of other people who have differences in some way. And I feel that if in doing an adventure series where it makes the reader stop and think, or maybe in some slight way will make the reader a more tolerant person, I think that that's a wonderful thing, and I'm very grateful for that. And I think as long as we get such beautifully depicted versions of the X-Men in animation, and as long as we get stories where they keep advancing and changing and growing, I think they'll just go on and on in the foreseeable future. And judging by the past, every year they seem to become more and more interesting, which is really a wonderful thing. And I will finish by saying, Excelsior!
We had an opportunity with the X-Men to retell them in a way that nobody had seen before. We got to explore new themes with these characters because they're teenagers in school.
They were going to a high school. They were dealing with
foes at different periods in their lives. So the surrounding environment had changed, and it was finding how they would now grow in that environment. Not only are they teenagers, they're mutants. They're experiencing all the changes kids in our world do, and changes that we could never imagine.
It was a lot of fun to try and surprise the audience and to keep it all interesting and still dealing with all of the kinds of themes that you want to see when you're watching the X-Men.
Season 2 wrapped up with a very loud bang. The mansion had been destroyed. Mystique had replaced Professor Xavier. And the really big thing is that the world saw for the first time that there were superpowered beings in their universe.
At that point, there was no going back. I mean, we opened the Pandora's box for them. You could not return these guys to the life they had before.
In Season 3, we got to the real core of the whole X-Men world, the conflict between normal humans and mutants, and the prejudice that exists there, and how the mutants deal with that.
You don't belong here.
It's the crux of the entire argument between Magneto and Professor X. Can we all live together in peace, or is there going to be too much mistrust and prejudice and all of the things that Magneto feared?
Magneto is the one who's upholding the principles of Homo Superior, that the mutants will one day and should rule all of Earth.
He's seen the darkness of humanity, and he thinks that they can't change, so we have been given the abilities as mutants to strike back, and we should.
The Acolytes are Magneto's new band of bad guys that he has gathered together. They're people that he has recruited, and these guys are more powerful in a lot of ways than the other mutants that we've seen.
Magneto was sure these guys could bring him what he wanted, which was a war among humans and mutants. Because if that could be initiated, then Charles would have to pick the side of mutants.
4 of us and 4 of you.
Only we ain't afraid to use our powers.
Brotherhood are pretty much their own group. The unofficial leader really is Lance, our Avalanche. He's Scott Summers gone bad in X-Men Evolution.
Tell me, why are you such losers?
Because the X-Men are winners. It all balances out.
They're sort of the misfits, the juvenile delinquents that we all knew in school, you know, the bullies and the ones that like to push other kids around. But then again, they're not completely, totally evil either. You know, it wasn't like we got to go out and conquer the world, or we got to do this or that. You know, it's just, they just wanted to kind of be left alone and use their power for selfish reasons.
They do need a leader. They need somebody, and Mystique saw that in each of them. And when she collected them together, she knew if she could ever harness their abilities, that she would have quite a team.
For kids in the audience, it's the, wow, wouldn't it be great if I had a superpower? And yet the smart thing that Marvel did with their characters is to show that with those powers come limitations. The Morlocks represent the extreme side of not all mutancies are really good. And in the case of most of the Morlock characters, their mutancy was extreme to a point where they just didn't feel like they could go out in public at all.
They are the worst case scenarios for mutants. They're the ones who can't walk among us. So they live in the underbelly of the city, and it's a tough life, and they live in a very dark world.
Craig Kyle came to me with an idea for a character, and it was very intriguing. And Craig asked if there would be room in the schedule for an episode about it. And I said, absolutely. So he and a writing partner wrote an episode, and it was spectacular.
The X-23 is a young girl who's a clone made from Wolverine's DNA. And she's X-23 because she's the 23rd attempt to create the perfect fighting weapon, and she's the one that was the most successful.
She was raised in the program, never knew outside contact from humans or anything else, and it was a very dark world where she was raised, and so when she was given her first chance to escape, she wanted to confront the monster she blamed for her existence. She wanted revenge.
Finally, she gets face-to-face with Wolverine, and all of her anger is focused on taking him out. And we got to face off Wolverine and X-23 in a fight where we really got to dice up the landscape. And now she has gotten quite a fan base, and she'll be showing up on comic book store shelves. For the first time, we have actually spawned a comic book character as opposed to the other way around.
Apocalypse is introduced in the series, and he's the first mutant. He was the one born thousands of years ago, the fluke that started the evolution of our world in a sense.
Well, of course, the word apocalypse in and of itself tells you who the character is. Apocalypse means the end of the world. He's basically going to destroy all of human life and or try and mutate whichever aspects of human life are susceptible to mutation.
It would take the most powerful mutants of the day to stand together, to awaken him, to give him the strength to rise out of his coffin.
I tell you, it was kind of interesting to have one villain so powerful that he could beat Xavier, Magneto, and every X-Men that we have come to know. And boy, I tell you, it'd be pretty hard not to come back for season 4.
The first season was the gathering. You know, it's the beginning. Mutants are popping up more and more, and they need to have a safe place where they can learn about each other and develop their skills and grow up safely.
There were moments in the first season that I thought were very strong, but the second season, I think we really hit a stride.
Season 2 was a real turning point, and it was the moment where a lot of things came together.
From this point on, this is an entirely new series. We had a lot of threads going. We wanted to bring them all into one cohesive storyline. Quite honestly, it was one of the hardest puzzles to put together because it is a very complex story.
We were having a lot of fun with sort of planting seeds all along the way that we could bring all together in our big finale and pay it all off. We knew we always wanted to introduce Wanda because she's part of the comic book family of Magneto, being his daughter, and Pietro, Quicksilver's sister.
Hey, you two need some serious family counseling.
We kept trying to think, what can we do with this character that's gonna give her an edge and make her really interesting? We kind of hit on this idea that her powers were just completely out of control, and that her father had actually committed her to this asylum.
This girl who's been locked in a mental institution for her entire life, from 6 until 16. This poor girl has been tortured. She's wrapped in straitjackets, and it takes 15 guys to get her out of her room. It's powerful stuff.
Wanda becomes a very central part of the Brotherhood team because, one, she brings as much of a hatred for Magneto as Mystique has, and two, she is so powerful. She basically kicks the rear ends of the entire X-Men team.
He's no good, Scott. We can't stop her. She's too strong. We've got to retreat.
She was the perfect weapon. Twist that hatred, bend it to become a weapon to destroy the X-Men, and then to ultimately seek her revenge and destroy Magneto.
Magneto had initially started off with the Brotherhood, and then he realized they just weren't cutting it.
Magneto needed, at that point, a new crew.
So he's assembled his new team, the Acolytes, and this was the perfect opportunity for us to reveal them in a very dramatic way. These silver orbs are coming out of the sky. They're landing. They open up, steam is coming out. You see the first one. Out comes Sabretooth. Suddenly in the foreground, there's a deck of cards. Can only be one person, it's Gambit.
The cry for Gambit was deafening. You know, people wanted to see Gambit. Have to have Gambit.
Pan over to see flames taking on a fiery face. It's Pyro.
This guy was a little crazy. He's got kind of a wide-eyed stare, and his hair's a little wilder than a normal character, and plus we wanted to give him the orange and yellow colors that signified fire.
And then out steps a huge, hulking Russian teenager, Colossus.
When it came to choosing who would be interesting to have as part of his group, we thought we would sort of turn a few things on their heads from the normal comic mythos, and so we picked a couple of characters that were actually part of the X-Men in the original stories.
It worked for Magneto, for him to have a new batch of villains that could really step up. They were older than our X-Men, only by a couple of years, but it made a big difference.
And it's one of the more memorable moments, I think, of the entire series, is the unveiling of this new team.
Another thought that we had at the beginning of the season is a way to work the Sentinels into our show.
I've created a prototype designed to defend mankind against the mutant threat, the Sentinel.
Sentinels were always a big part of the whole anti-mutant thing in the comics, and visually they're great. They're basically giant Terminators for mutants.
Wolverine, unfortunately, has the honor of being the first victim to fight the Sentinel. He does a nice job, but ultimately he's taken out.
When this big robot is brought up into light and you see it, and it's very powerful, and it's taking all of the X-Men and all of their abilities to try to take it down.
And the X-Men are young. They're not real seasoned fighters, and they're still learning how to deal with these big threats. And so when they come up against this thing, it's like nothing they've ever faced before. And so it's a serious thing that they have to figure out how to deal with. Mystique felt used and betrayed by Magneto by the end of the first season. She decided to go a little freelance here, and she had her own agenda.
Now I'm forced to make my move.
A big part of her plot was to use her shape-shifting ability to infiltrate the X-Men so that she could use the power and the resources of the X-Men as a tool to go back and fight Magneto.
When I downloaded Xavier's files from Cerebro, I found a complete psychological profile from his sessions with Wanda. She'll do what's needed because I can give her the one thing she wants most: revenge.
And Magneto didn't see that coming. So, in a way, it made an interesting sort of wild card out there for us to play around with.
What you don't know through Hex Factor till the end of Day of Reckoning is that it's not really Xavier. In the Hex Factor, Mystique helps Wanda escape, and then she's heading back inside, turns into a guard and says, I've got something else to attend to. You don't know what that is until 4 episodes later.
In those last 2 episodes, you see Xavier being very heated with the X-Men, which you never see.
You rushed him? Like you were going to take him by surprise?
Professor,
Magneto is always 2 steps ahead, Scott.
And he's having Jean use Cerebro, and that's his device.
So we had to be very careful about showing the Professor doing things that Mystique was really unable to do in her disguise as him. Every time he needed to talk to the group, we had him entering the scenes. He entered the kitchen and told Scott, we need to gather everybody. Normally, he would have done that telepathically.
The nice thing is most people didn't figure that out. And it was a pretty cool moment where you see Scott take Jean's arms off of him, and he walks over and he grabs Xavier by the shirt, picks him up out of his wheelchair, and throws him on the ground. You're like, he's gone crazy! And then he stands up, and then it's Mystique. It just shows how in danger everything is, and they are.
And now things are about to get much worse.
Mystique has blown up the mansion in the hopes of destroying every New Mutant. Magneto has shown the whole world that we exist, and the government have many of our X-Men and some of the Brotherhood in their clutches. It's a huge turning point. It reveals what a mastermind Mystique is, that she is our greatest foe in the series, that Magneto is right, because the worlds are like aliens, UFOs, creatures from another planet, monsters, what are they? And Xavier's missing.
So that's a great cliffhanger. It's like, okay, everything's gone wrong for these guys. How are they going to get out of this, you know? So blowing up the mansion was not only a big visual, but it was like the icing on the cake for how bad things really got.
This is where we turn the world against mutants. And we enter the world the hardcore fans were dying to see.
What we wanted to do was strand our characters. They are now hated by the world, and they have no place to go. And that's where we wanted to leave them at the end of season 2.
This finale changed and defined our series forever. Nothing was ever the same.
What are X-Men if not problem solvers, right?
I'm about to feel really big and stupid, if you know what I mean.
The following program was paid for by the Charles Xavier Foundation.
Xavier's Institute, a center for higher learning that teaches very special teenagers very special things. Are you a fuzzy blue elf? Got icicles flying from your fingertips? Can you turn into a kibble-munching canine at the flick of a flea collar?
Cool it, bub. I'll man the mic from here. It's me, Logan, Wolverine. So you're thinking about signing up for the Institute, huh?
Yeah, I've come to join the X-Men.
Yeah, got it. Well, Chuck is making, Professor Xavier asked me to show you potential new recruits around our facilities. So what do you say we get this over with? Xavier's is where kids with uncanny abilities can interact with other teens that have gifts of their own. During the day, you'll take tests and make the grade down the hill at Bayville High. But when the last bell rings, it's back to the mansion for an afternoon snack of sweat-filled training sessions as we put your powers to the test. But enough blabbing. Let's look at the house. Drop your muddy loafers at the door.
Welcome to Mutant Manor. Breakfast is at 7.
Here's the main hall. Pretty big place, huh? Well, don't let the size put a scare in you. Scott, Kurt, and the other kids learned to call it home, eating and sleeping in the joint. Speaking of which, let me start by showing you where they do both. This is the kitchen, the place to grab chow and take in some too. Thankfully, Blob is with the Brotherhood, so we managed to keep the fridge pretty well stocked. But the bottom shelf is mine, got it? Oh, and you use it, you wash it. Enough said. Upstairs, we got the bedrooms. Nothing here's queen size, but they do the trick. Now, you may find yourself sharing a room when you first show up, but in time, you'll fetch your own turf to pin up posters, surf the net, and shoot the baloney with your buds on the phone. Unless you're Gene, then you can just make a cranium call using your telepathy. Nice. Need a shower after saving the universe? Clean towels are in the cabinet. But fair warning, here at Xavier's, we don't believe in dilly-dallying. So if Kitty's hogging the bathroom fighting off a bad hair day, I suggest you head down to the library. Nothing straightens the old sideburns like a good book. And the professor requires every student to work out their minds as well as their mutant powers. Yeah, that's right. You'll be working with the man himself. They don't call this the Xavier Institute for nothing. Aside from teaching classes, Charles is available to help the students tackle their teenage troubles. His office is always open, but Chuck and I aren't the only faculty here. Storm and Beast will help you hone your powers and handle life as a mutant, and we don't restrict our special instruction to backyard ballistics or swimming pool splash-arounds. We keep the cool stuff downstairs. This is where I get to spend lots of quality time with the students. Call this place the Danger Room. You gotta think before you start playing Cowboy Commando. Spike's working to get a grip on his gift so he can push his powers to the max. In addition to being an obstacle course that would cause most pro athletes to lose their lunch, we can make this place look and feel like limitless landscapes and locations, even the surface of an alien planet. So you think you're good. Go a couple of rounds in here, bub, and then we'll talk. Now, it's called the Danger Room for a reason. So if you skin your knee, we'll set you up in here, the infirmary. Don't expect me to spoon-feed you soup, but we'll make sure you heal up quick and get back in the hunt. And we haven't forgotten you techno-whizzes. If you haven't figured it out yet, this place is wired. And as impressive as this spread is, our computer system sure ain't nothing to sneeze at. Don't worry. We're not always stuck in the study hall and cooped up in the basement. Like any school, we believe in giving our students a breath of fresh air from time to time. You know, field trips. No, we don't have a big yellow bus to climb into, but we make do with the X-Jet, X-Van, and X-Copter. And since we enjoy our privacy, we try not to advertise our fancy rides. Speaking of privacy, I know most mutants like to keep their abilities under wraps if they can, but we're here to help. And that's where Cerebro comes in. Cerebro is the most sophisticated mutant locator on the planet. Sure, it's not easy to talk about being a mutant, but that's why we're here. The Institute was designed to give you a safe place to explore your new gifts with other people who are going through the same things you are. Now, Xavier's a good guy, and he's working hard towards folks' acceptance of us and our abilities. Unfortunately, not everyone is on board with Xavier's peaceful agenda. Lump in the fact that we're sporting a lot of high-dollar hardware around here means that we've installed a pretty effective little security system to help protect the kids in the mansion. All of the fancy gadgets do a decent job of discouraging the bad news from sniffing around. But when all else fails, Xavier's Institute has the toughest security system that money can't buy. Me. Something we can do for you, bub? That's pretty much the tour. I'm not much of a public speaker, but I think you get the idea how the joint works. If you got any questions, give us a call or schedule an appointment to visit with Charles. We'll see you soon. Real soon.
This is Charles Xavier. Now that you're an auxiliary member of the X-Men, you've been given clearance to receive this top-secret briefing from Cerebro. Here at the Xavier Institute, we strive to develop our abilities for the betterment of mankind. But other mutant groups are not so benevolent and seek to direct their powers toward more destructive ends. The Acolytes are one such group. Cerebro has detected and profiled their members. Eric Magnus Lencher, codename Magneto. He is the founder and leader of the Acolytes. Magneto has the extraordinary ability to manipulate magnetic fields, allowing him to turn everyday metal objects into the most dangerous of weapons. We've had run-ins with him in the past, most recently when he was leading the Brotherhood. His frustration with that group, and Mystique in particular, led him to organize the Acolytes. Magneto possesses the misguided belief that mutants should rule mankind, using any means at their disposal. His ego and lust for power frequently result in his taking reckless action. This behavior can leave him vulnerable, an opportunity which should not be wasted. Victor Creed, codename Sabretooth. A human wrecking machine, Sabretooth was the product of a top-secret government program called Weapon X. Like Wolverine, Sabretooth possesses a heightened healing ability and enhanced senses. Sabretooth also has fang-like canines and razor-sharp claws at the end of his fingers. Filled with an often uncontrollable animalistic rage, Sabretooth, like his namesake, is an unpredictable adversary. Remy LeBeau, codename Gambit. Remy has the unusual ability to charge any object with kinetic energy. This overload of energy causes the object to explode in the event of an impact. His notorious signature weapon is a seemingly harmless deck of playing cards. When charged, the deck becomes an arsenal, essentially serving as 52 lightweight grenades. Trained as a thief, Gambit is at heart a mercenary, willing to work for the highest bidder. It is this untrustworthiness that constitutes his primary weakness, for Magneto can never be certain how deep Gambit's loyalty truly runs. Gambit's skill, cunning, and tremendous fighting ability, however, make him an asset that Magneto cannot afford to bench. Pyotr Rasputin, codename Colossus. He hails from the Great Plains of the Russian steppes, and his power is just as vast and imposing. Colossus possesses the ability to turn his entire body into an impenetrable armor of organic metal. Despite his daunting size and strength, Colossus seems to be a quiet and typically gentle person. His reasons for allying himself with Magneto are unknown at this time, but we have intelligence that suggests Magneto is holding a member of his family hostage. If Colossus is truly being blackmailed into fighting for the Acolytes, then freeing his captive relative may well convince him to join our cause. John Allardyce, codename Pyro. This member of the Acolytes has the intriguing ability to manipulate fire and mold it into any shape his imagination can conjure. His temperament is often like the conflagrations he creates, wild and dangerous. His main weakness is that he cannot generate fire without the gas-filled tank on his back. Take away the flame, and you take away his power. Jason Wingard, codename Mastermind. Wingard has the ability to read other people's thoughts and rewrite their memories. Even Magneto must wear his shielded helmet to protect himself from the effects of Mastermind's power. Not much else is known about Wingard, including his motivations. While he appears to be working for the Acolytes, he has used his powers against them in the past. It is thus impossible to anticipate for which side he will be an ally and which he will be an enemy. While the Acolytes have their vulnerabilities, their combined powers represent a threat too great for the X-Men to ignore. With the help of Cerebro, we must remain vigilant and never underestimate their capabilities. It is our responsibility to maintain peace and stability between mutants and non-mutants alike. Hello, I'm Professor Charles Xavier. After years of detection and tracking, the supercomputer known as Cerebro has amassed an extensive database on every known mutant, from those who would oppose our group to the members of the X-Men itself. As a continuing part of your training, you will now receive access to our top secret files. Pay close attention. This knowledge may one day save your life. Logan, codename Wolverine. His indestructible adamantium claws are his most prominent and outwardly dangerous weapon, giving him the ability to slice through almost any substance. This same metal alloy has also been fused to his bones, enhancing his resistance to attack. But Wolverine's greatest ability lies in his mutant healing factor, granting him the power to heal his injuries in mere moments. The power, in conjunction with his adamantium skeleton, makes him a nearly indestructible adversary. In addition to his healing factor, Logan also possesses heightened animal-like senses. Specifically, he's endowed with extraordinary night vision and the ability to track a quarry by scent.
Hold it right there, Logan.
Logan is by nature a loner, but has put aside this propensity for solitude to become an instructor at the Xavier Institute. He tends to be rather hard on his students and often employs unorthodox teaching methods in order to get his point across. This can be attributed to the fact that Wolverine is a veteran of many battles and understands all too well that training is frequently all that stands between victory and defeat. Aurora Monroe, codename Storm. Like the phenomenon from which she takes her name, Aurora's unique mutant ability allows her to harness and manipulate the forces of nature. Calling on the power of the elements, she can create violent storms, summon lightning from a benign sky, manifest blizzards instantly, and even whip up whirlwinds to bear herself aloft. Aurora's power has always been closely linked with her emotions. As such, she has had to teach herself a large degree of self-control. Containing her emotions isn't always easy, though, and when she fails, the results can be quite dramatic. Hank McCoy, codenamed The Beast. While Hank's mutation endowed him with a covering of blue fur, it also conveyed upon him extraordinary strength and agility. There is almost no feat of dexterity he cannot achieve. This makes him a difficult target in battle. As a teacher at the Xavier Institute, Hank instructs our students in chemistry and physical education. By looking at him, one wouldn't expect him to excel in the former, but in truth, Hank is actually the most erudite and well-educated member of the X-Men. He has proven an invaluable and well-liked instructor at our school.
Let's play ball!
Though the manner in which he disciplines the students is at times a bit lax for my tastes.
Time for a seventh-inning stretch.
Warren Worthington, codename Angel. Heir to the Worthington fortune, Angel was born with giant avian-like wings, which, in addition to giving him the power of flight, can also be used to create a variety of weapon-like effects. Angel is currently a lone vigilante. He has aided the X-Men on occasion, but continually refused my entreaties to join our group. I will not abate my attempts to convince him that our approach of working with the human population is the proper course for those with mutant abilities. Cerebro has recently detected a new alliance of mutants known as the Morlocks. Because they distrust the outside world, the Morlocks have chosen to avoid contact with their human counterparts. As such, they live alone in the sewers underlying the city. Though very little is known about them, we have verified that their key members include Callisto, a mutant with enhanced sensory power.
I see in the dark, Ray.
Caliban, who has an innate ability to detect other mutants and can see in complete darkness. Cybele, endowed with an acidic touch that can dissolve any object. Facade, who can call on his unique camouflage ability to render himself invisible to the naked eye. Lucid, a mutant who can see through solid objects, an X-ray vision of sorts. Torpid, a young child with the power to paralyze an opponent upon contact. And finally, Scaleface, who has the ability to morph into a giant reptilian beast. Though the Morlocks do not look for conflicts, they will not shy away from protecting themselves when threatened. As with all mutants and mutant groups we encounter, every effort must be exerted to convince them that the brightest future allows for mutual respect and peaceful coexistence.
Welcome. I am Mystique, and this is a test of your mutant knowledge. Because of your unique abilities, I have identified you as a potential member of the Brotherhood. But genetic gifts alone are not enough to gain entry into our ranks. For the Brotherhood to achieve its goals, you must have a complete understanding of your teammates' abilities as well as a knowledge about those who would oppose us. Be sure to mark down your answers. Only those candidates with a passing grade will be accepted. Remember, in the battle between mutants, knowledge is just as important as power.
And now things are about to get much worse.
Question 1. Juggernaut is Professor X's blank. A, stepson, B, half-brother, C, clone, or D, aunt? The answer is B. Cain Marco, codenamed Juggernaut, is Professor X's half-brother. He received his rampaging strength when a mystic force activated his dormant X gene. I'm still trying to recruit him for the Brotherhood. Question 2. What is Spike's favorite sport? A, golf, B, fencing, C, skateboarding, or D, soccer? While Spike does play soccer, his favorite sport is executing gravity-defying maneuvers on his skateboard. Although now that he's living with the Morlocks, the skateboard park is a much less interesting place these days. Question 3. Which mutant is the leader of the Morlocks? A, Caliban, B, Callisto, C, Facade, or D, Cybele? B is the correct answer. Callisto, the mutant with the ultra-enhanced senses, leads the Morlocks but will discourage them from seeking conflict or battles with the outside world. Spineless coward. Question 4. Who is the Scarlet Witch's father? A, Professor X, B, Magneto, C, Quicksilver, or D, Caliban? If you were paying attention, you'd know that B is the right answer. Magneto is the Scarlet Witch's father, although their relationship doesn't translate into family loyalty. Perhaps one day I will be able to exploit their differences to the advantage of the Brotherhood. Question 5. Which mutant is not a product of the secret government ops program known as Weapon X? A, Wolverine, B, Sabretooth, C, X-23, or D, Iceman? If you didn't answer D, I'm beginning to have serious doubts about your usefulness to the Brotherhood. Weapon X, the top-secret ops program sponsored by the Canadian government, produced the deadly human fighting machines known as Wolverine, Sabretooth, and X-23. The only thing Iceman has in common with Canada is the freezing ice which covers him. Question 6. Which guise have I, Mystique, not used in the past? A, Professor X, B, Principal of Bayville High, C, Rogue's friend Risty, or D, Beast? I have used many guises to wreak chaos within the ranks of our adversaries, but answer D, the Beast, is not one of them. For those of you who did not answer correctly, my patience is wearing thin. Question 7. What is the code name of the secret government installation where captured X-Men and Brotherhood members were kept? A, the Chasm, B, Area 51, C, Thunder Mountain, or D, Olympus? Of course, B should have been your answer. The secret government installation known as Area 51 in the Nevada desert is also where I was trapped thanks to that interloper Cyclops. I will punish him severely when next we meet. That concludes our test. Now let's review your results. 7 correct? Welcome to the Brotherhood. Your abilities will aid us mightily. 6 correct? You've got potential. Keep studying, and if Xavier or Magneto contact you, see me first. 4 to 5 correct? You're too great a risk. Until you gain more knowledge, your presence will jeopardize our success. 2 to 3 correct? You must have cut class to go out for pizza with the Blob. Better retake Mutant 101. 0 to 1 correct? Only a non-mutant would have such little knowledge. Are you a human spy? For your sake, I hope not. Because I don't take kindly to traitors. Are you Brotherhood material? If so, I will be contacting you shortly. If you haven't achieved our standards yet, continue to expand your mutant knowledge and be ready to be tested again at a moment's notice. Because I may appear anywhere or as anyone when you least expect it.
Guess who's back?
Welcome to Toad's Test. A little pop quiz from the Brotherhood's master of hop.
Sorry, missed lunch.
Delicious. Better than bologna. So there's a whole lot of moving and shaking going on around Bayville, with that bald guy in the big house and the rest of the X-Men messing with Toad and his crew. So I'm making positive you dudes and dudettes at home have kept your eyes and ears glued to all the awesome action. Take Toad's test, and if you put up some points, he might catch a tasty after-school snack just for you. Put on your thinking helmets. Here we go. Question 1. Which of the following mutants briefly joined the Brotherhood? A. Berserker. B. Longshot. C. Boom Boom. D. Iceman. You get a gold star with C. Boom Boom. She didn't last long, but Boom Boom was the best-smelling member of Toad's team during her brief time with the Brotherhood.
Room's all yours!
Moving on. Question 2. In addition to his crazy long whip-like tongue, Toad has the ability to A. Shoot lasers from his teeth. B. Leap high. C. Read minds. D. Fry bacon. B. Leap high. Hey, his name's Toad for a reason. Look out! Question number 3. Cyclops' brother's name is A. Hank McCoy. B. Alex Masters. C. Steve Rogers. D. Nick Fury. No detention if you answered B. Alex Masters. He surfs, he shoots some crazy stuff from his hands, and yeah, he annoys Toad just as much as his brother. Next, open the door for question 4. Both the X-Men and the Brotherhood attend classes at A. Bayville High. B. Empire State University. C. Bayville Academy. D. Tube Sock Tech. A. Bayville High. Although the joint is barely big enough for the two of them, both the X-Men and the Brotherhood spend their weekdays within the walls of Bayville High. Look alive, it's question 5. Which of the following mutants did Magneto not recruit for the Acolytes? A. Pyro. B. Gambit. C. Sabretooth. D. Angel. The correct answer is D. Angel. This feathered friend of the X-Men is simply too light on attitude for the likes of the Acolytes. You'll get your kicks from question 6. The huge mutant hunting robot designed by Bolivar Trask is called A. Colossus. B. Ultron. C. The Sentinel. D. The Senator. C. The Sentinel is the magic answer. This thing is tough. And it's the only thing in Bayville bigger than Blob's bathrobe. Massive! And now for the super duper extra special way cool moocha quite awesome bonus question. The hippest, most happening mutant with all the right moves is A. Toad. B. Todd the Tongue. C. Fine young Mr. Talansky. D. All of the above. Come on, total no-brainer. D. All of the above. The Toadster is tops. All right, time to face the music, mutant lovers. How did you do? 7, 100%. You rock and roll. Here's a bug sandwich. Side of flies. 6, you rock. Here's a half a bug sandwich. Hold the flies. 4 to 5, not too shabby. Not Mystique smart, but not Blob silly either. 2 to 3, say what? Finally, someone's report card stinks worse than Toad's. 0 to 1. Give me a break, I handed you the bonus question. Apparently, your thinking helmet is missing some parts. Return it for a new one. Then return here for a retest. At any rate, fellas, it's been fun. And ladies, if you're ever passing through Bayville, look Toad up.
This here's Wolverine's Trivia Challenge. All right, let's see how well you've been paying attention. Part of your training here at the Institute involves learning about your powers and how to best utilize them. But when you're in a tough situation, you better know and understand the people you're working with. So I designed this little pop quiz to gauge just how well you know your teammates and their uncanny abilities. Keep track of your correct answers. You are being graded. First up, question 1. One of Wolfsbane's special abilities is that she can A. Irritate wolves, B. Shapeshift into a wolf, C. Eat quickly, or D. Tap dance. The answer is B. Wolfsbane can turn herself into a wolf. Question 2. Cyclops' special visor helps him to A. Control the energy that radiates from his eyes, B. Look cool for the ladies, C. Watch 3D movies, or D. Have enhanced physical strength. If you answered A, you're right on target. Although it does make him look kinda cool. The special visor helps Cyclops maintain control over the energy that radiates from his eyes. Now on to question 3. The mutant locator device that the Professor and Jean use is called A. The mutant locator device, B. The big silver place thingamajiggy, C. Cerebro, or D. Moon Knight. The answer is C. Cerebro. Using the term thingamajiggy to describe anything at the Institute will earn you an automatic probation. Cerebro is the mutant locator device that, when used with the Professor or Jean's telepathy, can track mutant activity anywhere on the planet. Question 4. My claws are made out of which type of metal? A. Aluminum, B. Adamantium, C. Tinfoil, or D. Steel. You made the cut if you answered B. My claws are 100% adamantium, an unbreakable metal which makes them strong enough to cut through practically anything. Next up, question 5. I also go by the name A. Hogan, B. Magnum, C. Logan, D. Bucky. The answer is C. When we're not in the field, you can call me Sir. My friends call me Logan. Question 6. Which one of the following people can pass or phase through solid objects? A. Cyclops, B. Rogue, C. Multiple, or D. Shadowcat. You pass if you answered D. Shadowcat's the only one on this list who's going through a wall without wrecking it. Question 7. Kurt wears a device that helps him blend in when he's in public. It's disguised as A. Hat, B. Brooch, C. Pterodactyl, or D. Watch. The correct answer is D. Kurt's image inducer is disguised as a watch. Now it's time for your grade. If you correctly answered 7 questions, perfect. Step aside, Cyclops. We got a new team leader. 6 questions. Keep your nose to the grindstone, bub. Your training is paying off. 4 to 5 questions. Review your data and try again. It's important to know your teammates. 2 to 3 questions. You need more time in the danger room. Watch your teammates and learn. 0 to 1 questions. You're on probation, bub. Start waxing the X-Jet. Missed a spot. Study up and try again, bub.